And Jess, okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's session of our 8-part spring workshop series. Today's webinar is starting a mobile food business working with a shared use kitchen. I'm Jess Calkins, the community food systems educator for UW-Madison Extension Dane County. We are having our session co-hosted by Chris Brockel, Northside Planning Council Food Systems Director. And our main speaker is Chef Thony Clarke, owner of Café, Costa Rica and Mango Man Salsa. Our no-cost series of online sessions for food entrepreneurs and farm-based food businesses is brought to you by our Food Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Development Initiative of the Extension Community Food Systems Program. We are a statewide extension program that fosters equitable, resilient, and sustainable community food system development through research, evaluation, project-based partnerships, and programming like this. So now I'm going to give a little bit of information about our co-host, which is Chris Brockel. Chris is the Northside Planning Council Director of Food Systems, which includes Feed Kitchens, Healthy Food for All, and Feed Bakery and Training. Chris has been involved in food systems work since 2004 and has worked with Feed Kitchens since 2015. He's passionate about local food with a specific interest in accessibility and equity. And Chris lives in Madison and enjoys a sense of community in Madison neighborhoods and working with the neighborhood community garden. So Chris, we're going to turn it over to you to share about your work with us.
Thanks, Jess, and good afternoon, everybody. We've got quite a crew here joining us. I'm assuming from across the state and maybe even outside the state. And if you are part of this webinar, I'm guessing you either have a food cart or you're thinking of starting a food cart. So we're going to talk today a little bit about a shared kitchen and using a shared kitchen. I'm also guessing from having done these a number of times and meeting people that come into Feed Kitchens, you have lots of other questions about food cart businesses as well. And we will leave as much time as we can at the end of this presentation to ask those questions. I'm here with our main presenter, Chef Thony Clarke. There he is. And he runs a business here, and I will be introducing him in a bit. But first, let me talk a little bit about Feed Kitchens itself. As just said, we are a food business, shared use kitchen, commercial kitchen, food business incubator. A lot of words. We're actually really a hybrid. You know, people think of a food business incubator as a place that takes startups, works with them, and then graduates them at some point into the community. And certainly that is our hope for a lot of businesses working out of here, and their hope as well. But with food carts, a lot of times it's beyond incubation, and now we're just acting as a host. Because if you're working, with a food cart, you have to be out of a commercial kitchen space as your base of operations. And so unless you own your own restaurant or are going to buy your own production facility, you're going to be working out of a shared space as a place to operate. Feed Kitchens itself, located on the north side of Madison. We are a 5,400 square foot facility. We have 90 businesses that operate out of here. We have 5 production spaces. We're a 24/7 facility, so people that are operating here get keys to the facility and access to a 24/7 calendar. We have 25 food carts that are operating out of here this year. We have about 15 caterers and then a whole bunch of value-added product makers and bakers. So everything from kombucha brewing to vegetable processing to flavored popcorn, you name it, it's being made here. Food carts are unique in that they are seasonal. Certainly we get a lot of food carts that say they're going to go year round, but that first 0 degree day in December usually puts an end to that. And you need traffic on the street to be able to sell. So no matter how brave you are standing out in the cold, if no one's walking past your cart, you're not going to have business. So things to think about in a shared space, because whether it's here at Feed where you're working with 25 other folks, or whether it's you're got an agreement with the restaurant, and it's just you and that restaurant operating out of that space. There are things to consider. Certainly there are advantages for you as a food cart operator working in a shared space. You would have less overhead for the equipment. You can put your money into your cart and your operations. And maybe access to equipment that you wouldn't otherwise be able to access just because of affordability. But things to think about when you're looking at shared space, the first thing is, where do you find space? I Googled it this morning, shared kitchens in Wisconsin, and believe it or not, the list is pretty extensive. I was impressed. We like to say, the options are pretty limited. But when you look at the list, it seems like there are a number of options out there. Now, each one of those has to be vetted, of course. Some of them I clicked into, and they may say things like, well, we don't have a lot of ovens, but if you're packaging things, this is a great space for you. So not every space is going to be perfect for you, but things to look at. How much room is there to operate? Is there parking available, or do I have to pay for parking? What types of equipment? Who else is operating out of here? How clean is it when I walk around? When you enter into a shared space, you will sign a shared kitchen agreement that will be required by public health or DATCAP, whoever is licensing you. And that shared kitchen agreement sort of outlines responsibilities, and you are as responsible as the owner of that space to maintain equipment and keep it clean. Remember, anytime you are operating in a shared space, the things that you do affect the other people in that space, and the things that they do affect you as well. And so food safety and health are of primary importance. When we see food carts come in here, sometimes they're just starting their business. Sometimes they're migrating from somewhere else. A lot of times people have been in relationships with an individual restaurant, and that's a great place to start. I will say over time, at least from our experience here, we see that those relationships can degrade, generally, whether that's because personalities, whether that's cleanliness, whether that's the perception that somebody's dipping into my ingredients where they shouldn't be, whether I changed my restaurant hours and now I don't have time to host you here. There's lots of reasons why that could go away. So it's careful if you're in those spaces to be as generous as possible with the people who are sharing it with you. One thing that we expect here at Feed Kitchens is that good behavior is above and beyond all things the most important thing that you can do. You're all chefs. You all know how to cook. So learning how to operate in a shared space and getting along with others is extremely important. Providing each other technical assistance. What we see here is some of the more experienced people like Tony can prop up and help the less experienced people and figure out where to go to vend, how to get into festivals, where's the best places on the street, how do I operate in the city of Madison versus other spaces. Those are all things to consider. So you have some responsibilities. The business owner is going to have some responsibilities to that space. What can go wrong in a shared space? Things that you need to be just watching out for: cross contamination. Who's doing what in that space? Are they being clean? Are they putting their things away? Are they labeling? Are they covering and lidding? And those kinds of things. Is it clean? Is it cleaned up when you get there? If it is, make sure it is clean when you leave. The one thing that we see here with food cart operators is generally they're single operators, maybe two people operating. They're always in a hurry. They're always trying to get somewhere quickly. Plan on time so that you can do what you need to do for production and still have time to clean up. Because if you're leaving the kitchen and leaving it messy, even if you're saying, well, I'll come back and clean it up later, life gets busy and a lot of times that doesn't happen. So clean up, clean as you go, clean before you leave. Watch for your ingredients, take care of your ingredients. Don't use other people's ingredients without asking. And just be a positive person. It goes a long way in getting along in a shared space. I'm going to introduce You can ask me questions later. I could talk all day on this stuff, but you're really here to hear Chef Thony Clarke, and he is going to be joining you in just a moment. Chef Thony has owned multiple restaurants here in Madison, Café Costa Rica. He has closed those restaurants down and is now operating a food cart here. He actually has been for a number of years. He actually ran that food cart out of his restaurants and was probably one of the first food carts on the streets in the city of Madison. So he's got a lot of experience both in operating in a shared kitchen space here at Feed, operating in his own restaurants, and during the off season to make extra money and to keep his business going year round, he makes bottled sauces. So he has a green sauce and a red salsa that he makes and sells through Willie Street Co-op and some other venues here. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Chef Thony Clarke.
Ta-da! How you guys doing today? My name is Thony Clarke, and people know me around in this neck of the woods as the Mango Man. I am a food cart owner. I mean, in fact, that's how everything started for me. Everything started as a food cart. It was not easy. It was really hard. It was really hard, and it was hard because I didn't know anything. I didn't have any information, even though I tried to find information and I asked a lot of questions because I'm not shy. I didn't get it. Therefore, excuse me, I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned from those mistakes. Because of the food cart, I managed to open 2 restaurants, a little one, and then the other one was the size on Willie Street was kind of big. After a while, I was burning out because I was the only chef and running 2 places. So yes, I'm crazy. Yes, I know I'm crazy. I don't know how I did it. It was a lot of work. So I kind of shut them down and kind of diverted. We just went back to the basics, the food cart and catering services, and focus on my sauces. And thankfully, through the years, I got to know people that give me a hand. I mean, I didn't do this alone. And there's a lot of people that, when everything got started with the restaurants and everything else, a lot of people helped me out. And not only, supporting me with my businesses, coming in and eating the food. And a lot of people helped me out, like putting myself together, because like I said, it's not easy. And I mean, like I said before, I mean, in the beginning, I didn't have any support because I didn't know what I was doing. As I knew more people, I mean, I kind of surrounded myself with a nice network of people that really give me a hand, and that's how that works. I mean, you need to depend on your friends, people that believe in you. If you're thinking about opening a food cart, you need to sit down and really go through your plan. First thing is first, you need to get your Safe Serve certification first. That's going to give you a lot of information of what you need to do, how you need to go about it, how clean you need to be, the potential hazardous stuff. And I mean, that's extremely important. Another thing, you need to be strong mentally, because it will wear you down. You need to kind of get yourself ready for disappointment, because not everything is peachy, and not everything is like, I'm happy. We have bad days in the beginning, so you need to prepare yourself mentally for that. Again, nowadays it's easier because there is support. There is the Feed kitchens, and I have myself wide open to answer any questions and any inquiries from anybody. because I made it my job because I had such a terrible time that I made it my job to spread the love, you know, to give this stuff to people so they have a leg up to know exactly what to do and what not to do. I mean, I can talk about my experiences. Obviously, everybody is not going to have the same experience, but you know, getting some information will make things easier for you. So don't hesitate to contact Chris or myself so we can do this.
We talk about working in a shared kitchen versus in your own restaurant.
Well, I mean, working in a shared kitchen is quite an adjustment. It's the kind of situation that you don't get to be selfish, even though we are masters of our own space. And sometimes we want to keep it like so. In a shared kitchen, that's out the window. You get to share, you get to smile, and you get to play nice, you know. And you get to be extremely clean, and you know, do your due diligence and do your part of being in the shared kitchen pretty well. To me, it was a shock because I mean, having my own kitchen, actually had two. To this, it was quite it was quite a shock to my system to don't take up all of the space. So that's what I did in the beginning. So I adjusted that. I mean, in this community, the one where I exist right now is great. I have had support of the management. They're always open to help out and and teach and inform us about everything that's going on, even opportunities, for business with your food cart, catering, or your product if you're going to produce. Because I am a sauce maker, like Chris told you, I produce 2 sauces here from the feed kitchens, and I have it in 3 or 4 different stores, the Willie Street Co-op and Woodman's and different places. So that keep me busy year around, because I like to be busy. Because the food cart, it is a seasonal gig here in the Midwest. We don't have a choice. It gets cold and it gets slippery too. Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm done now. What else? What else do we do?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Chris and Thony. And as you can tell, Thony has been, lots of experience and has kind of navigated a lot of different settings and different situations to kind of get to sorting out, I think, what works well for you now. Can you tell us, Thony, maybe a little bit about like what sort of next for you, or what kind of directions or things you're looking into for the future?
Well, yeah, I mean, I started a long time ago, like with the food business and the food cart and the restaurants and stuff. I'm in the middle of a long transition from the food cart and catering to dedicate myself only to my value-added products. As I've been doing this for so long, I've been testing all my product live with people in different events, concerts, and caterings and stuff. And people, they kind of fall in love with the product. And I made it my job to put those products in a format that people recognize and they can eventually take home. My slogan is Mango Man Cook, so you don't have to. So there you go.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we will, as I mentioned before, we'll happy to have some questions. I know both Chris and Tony are happy to answer any types of questions you have. And there are a few coming in already in the chat. So you're welcome to, if you feel comfortable, either raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask your question directly. Could be for one or both of our speakers. Or if you prefer, you can also put it in the chat and we can pull it out of there. So I will just kind of take a look and see. It looks like we've got a question about regarding the shared kitchen and other than cleanliness, what are some of the must-haves in a shared kitchen?
What are some of the must-haves in a shared kitchen? Well, I would say if you're running a food cart, you must have parking. You must have access to potable water. You must have access to being able to dispose of your gray water. So those are very important things. Being able to fill up your water tank before you leave with potable water. Very important. Public health will be watching where you dump your wastewater. So do not be dumping it on the street. Do not be dumping it in the sewer. If your kitchen does not have a mop sink or some easy access to getting rid of gray water, then you're going to be wanting to search out an RV station or a truck stop where you can dump it. Otherwise, what to look for, what other services do people provide? Here at Feed, as Tony said, we provide connection services. We operate a service called Mad City Food Carts, where we connect event organizers with food carts and food providers, street festivals, weddings, street fairs, carnivals, marinas, you name it, that are looking for help. What other value-added services do they offer? Do they offer access to resources? Do I bring my own towels? Does the kitchen have towels, aprons, smallwares, equipment? All of those things are good questions to ask. What do I need to bring? What's going to be supplied here? And ultimately, you know your product, what you're going to need access to. Do you need access to a deep fryer? Who changes the oil? Who filters the oil? What was done in that oil? We have one deep fryer here at Feed Kitchens, and it's a pain in my rear to figure out who did what in that deep fryer. Was it chicken? Was it fish? Was it vegetarian? Can I do vegetarian in there? Well, who cleaned it last? Deep fryers are a big deal. So that hopefully that answers your question, but your production needs are going to determine also what you look for in the kitchen.
Thanks, Chris. There's actually one other question kind of related to that for shared kitchens, and then I've got a question for Tony. But there's a question about in the 5,400 square feet at Feed Kitchens, how many hoods, ovens, and washing stations do you have? And do you share your shared kitchen agreement and lease?
So I can definitely, the shared kitchen agreement actually comes from Madison-Dane County Public Health and or DATCAP. I can certainly share that. You can find those online. I would be more than willing to share our resources here. We've been around for 10 years and have gone through a lot of hard knocks getting to where we are at. So if other people are looking at shared kitchens and want some advice in networking, we can share our experience and show some of our scars from that. Can I forget the other part of that question?
Sorry, they were asking, I think, about like just the what's contained in the 5,400 square feet as far as,
So we actually have three large hoods. We have a fourth hood that's just over our rack oven for bakery. So we have 5 kitchens, 3 of them that are really appropriate for sort of prep meal production. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 convection ovens, 3 gas stove ranges, a deep fryer, an Alto Sham. Generally when people rent a kitchen here, they get that kitchen to themselves. But if you're a food cart, you do not. You share a kitchen. And we put food carts on a plan, so they get reduced rates compared to other folks because they are sharing space. But that sharing space comes with a lot of other responsibilities as well. And that's why it's important that folks can get along.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. I think we've got a question, raised hand from Ali. And so we can take your question next and then see what
Okay,
you'd like to know. Yeah.
good afternoon. A question more for, I think, Chris here. I'm starting a shared kitchen, sort of a co-op with myself and several other food trucks and bakers. And wanted to know if there's some sort of a boilerplate contract that I can put together, like a lease or some sort of like that, I can use. I'm sure you guys are doing it at Feed with your folks that are joining in. I want to use it for myself. Is there some sort of a standard contract? By the way, I'm in Brown County, so I don't think I'll be, I'm not going to be
Right.
in your neck of the woods, but
We welcome more folks here because we are just about at capacity, especially with food carts. But I wish you the best of luck. I always tell people that are starting shared spaces that be careful because it sounds like a great thing, but you're going to find that you've grabbed a tiger by the tail and it's going to control you as much as you control it. But is good planning. I am more than willing to share our agreements. We actually have 2 agreements. We have a lease agreement that's more legal, and then we have kind of a member guidelines agreement that people sign, and that's sort of our expectations of how people operate in the kitchen and process here. And what I tell people with that one is basically it's everything I learned in kindergarten about how to get along still applies here at Feed Kitchens. So more than willing to share those things. Another great resource would be Food Corridor is a national shared kitchen calendaring system and billing system. We use it here. It saves us a lot of time and headaches. It can be set up for an individual kitchen with your own profile and your own kitchen spaces, but they also operate something called the Network of Incubator Kitchens that supplies a lot of resources as well for these kinds of agreements and setting up shared spaces.
okay. Another question I had as a follow-up to that, starting a shared kitchen. I don't know what you guys do for rent. Is it dependent on the number of hours individual uses or the type of work they're going to do? Like, does a baker pay more or less versus someone who's bottling sauces, for instance? And I guess some of those.
Great question. We charge by the hour here. Our top rate is $30 an hour. I will say that is about the industry standard when you look around the country. At about $30 an hour. But we also offer plans of, so food carts, because they share spaces, are put on a plan. They have to choose their plan based on the number of hours they think they might operate in any given month, and that brings their price actually down to $17 an hour. But when we're putting 4 or 5 operators into a single kitchen, we're getting more than that $30 an hour out of that kitchen. Bakers, caterers are generally people start here by paying by the hour, but as they start to put in more hours, we may put them on a plan. Most people like to sort of know what their costs are going to be going into the month. We find when people are paying by the hour, sometimes they are putting in more hours than they thought they would, and they look at their invoices at the end of the month and say, oops, I'm paying way more than space than I was planning on. And so to make that a little bit more manageable for them, putting them on a plan and they know their costs in any given month up front. It is, each member here we are negotiating with. I don't give anyone big deals that I don't give other people, but everyone comes in with different situations. And we pride ourselves in working with folks who don't generally have access. So, low income folks, people who haven't generally had access to here, we're going to bend over backwards and try to get them, make it work for them.
And does an hourly rate include cleaning, or is it just for production?
So hourly rate is you have to plan your cleaning into that time. So if you plan on being here for 2 hours, you are cleaned up and out of that kitchen at the end of 2 hours. Because another person may have reserved it 1 minute after you're done, and they certainly don't want to be cleaning up your mess.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Tony, there's a question about that you were talking a bit about how important it is to build a network. And so there's some questions around how you went about building your network and what kind of advice you might have for others for that.
Well, in my case, it happened organically, I mean, time did it for me, I was out there and, and I got to meet a lot of people. I mean, having a food cart or a catering business, you are in the business of meeting people, asking people what they do and, where they work and, and you connect, nowadays it's a little bit easier because I mean, here in Madison, we have a Wibbick, right? Wibbick. Mm-hmm. And we got, you got feed kitchen, you got extensions here that have lots of info as far as how to go about things. But the places that don't have those kind of services, I mean, your job is to meet people and talk and connect.
I'm actually going to answer that question for Tony because he did a pretty good job, but he's too modest to say what the real thing is. When you are a food cart operator, when you are a chef, you are selling yourself as much as you're selling your food. Here in Madison, there's literally 100 options for food carts, let alone restaurants and things like that. Tony is a huge personality. Tony is a people person. He is gregarious. People love his food, but people love him as much. And so when they come to him, they're coming to him as much to be with Tony and to feel that glow of being around him as much as they are for his food. And so he is naturally building networks wherever he goes because he is reaching out to people and welcoming them in. The other thing that Tony does that impresses me is anytime I am bringing any new member here or potential new member and Tony is in the kitchen, he is the first person to reach out to those folks and to welcome them here, ask them what they're doing, what their plan is, how are they going to do, and then start giving them the same talk that he's giving you right now. And I don't pay him a dime to do it. In fact, he pays me to be in this kitchen. So oops, he's listening to me right now.
Uh-oh.
You figured it out. Oh, well, jig is up on that one. But personality, being gregarious, being outreach, selling yourself as much as you are your food is going to help create networks. And certainly being in a shared space, being that friendly, supportive person is going to help other people, but it's also going to pay you back in networks and supports as well.
Indeed. That's very true.
And so Tony, you talked about how you currently have the food cart, which I think you've had for several years, and then you also had the restaurants, and then you changed it to close the restaurants. Can you talk a little bit about what were some of the driving factors that led you to determine to focus on the food cart and the sauces instead of the restaurants?
Well, how can I put this? What happened to me is the opposite what usually happened to restaurants. Like usually you open a restaurant and you have 5 years for it to be a hit, and then if you don't make it in 5 years or less, you shut down. I worked really hard with my first place, which was really, it was tiny. And I got that place up and running in 2 years. It was sort of like a success, things just kind of like started growing. I mean, like it's like planting a tree, Then the roots kind of took a hold, and and then it just started to grow, and it grew to a level that it was. I was losing sight of my vision of what I wanted for myself. I I was in this Iron Chef, Super Chef mood that, you know, I finally look at myself and I'm like, Tony, what are you doing? You know, so it was a tough decision to shut down the place, but I was losing my mind. It was too much for one person to handle. I didn't have a partner chef to share responsibilities with. I was it. So that well said, that's the reason why I kind of shut it down. I said to myself, well, I'm going to divert back to the basics, to how everything started, you know? And at the time, I forgot the reason why I opened a restaurant. The reason why I opened a restaurant is because the food cart couldn't handle the amount of people that wanted the food cart. So here I am in the middle of it again, working 7 days a week in summer, you know, sometimes double shift, you know, plus sauces. So that's, I mean, it was a tough decision, but it was the right one, because I was overwhelmed with having two restaurant, and you know, employees and, you know, waitresses, and, you know, the turnaround was pretty quick. So I was finding myself training people left and right, I mean, every week. So yeah, that's the story of that one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It looks like we have a question from Colin, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hey, I have a question about potentially using specialized equipment. If, say, there's a machine that will make production more efficient for whatever the product may be, is there issues with that in terms of bringing, say, a specialized machine or additional equipment into a shared kitchen, or how does that kind of process work?
So good question. Each kitchen is going to have its own set of rules and expectations and what can or cannot happen in that kitchen. Here at Feed Kitchens, we do allow outside equipment to be brought in, or equipment that's owned by an individual operator. The requirements for that, of course, is that we have floor space for it, number one, and number two, that we actually have electrical service for it. It is amazing that there's no standardization for for plugs and which way plugs turn and prongs turn, and you know, we've switched electrical service here so often I'm not even sure some outlets what they're originally supposed to be. But yes, it's allowed. So what we do is we charge if we have space, and if we have electrical service and it can work, then we would charge somebody $25 a month to have that piece of equipment here. Right now we're hosting a freeze dryer from somebody. We have a dumpling maker here. I have a coffee roaster here. I have a mixer that mixes popcorn flavors, or puts flavor on popcorns. I have 3 huge fermentation barrels for kombucha. And so so the short answer is yes. Here at Feed Kitchens, you can do it. It's going to be different in any shared space. And of course, if the equipment creates heat or has an open flame, it needs to be under the hood, which is yet another consideration, because we have very limited space under any of our hoods right now.
Gotcha. And maybe just a follow-up on that as well. For those kind of specialized things you mentioned, are they reserved specifically for the person that owns them, or is the implication that it is shared because it is shared space, or how does that look?
So the person that owns it controls it. They are paying for it to be there. That's their machine. If they want to let other people use it, that's up to them. But that, in our eyes, is their machine, and we would not give permission for anyone else.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. I guess with Chris, just a few other questions that have come in kind of related to that. There's, well, actually a lot of questions, but what someone is talking about, asking what was the biggest hurdle or some of the biggest hurdles in starting Feed Kitchens. They are in an area where the nearest shared kitchen in Wisconsin is 2 hours away. And so they're kind of connecting with some folks and contemplating starting a shared kitchen, but just kind of wondering what some of those initial big hurdles are.
So I was not here for the planning and building of Feed Kitchens. I actually came here 2 years after it opened, but I can also tell you that when I came here, this place was very close to closing down. And so that's after 2 years of operation. So I think the big things, the big hurdles, number one is getting your funding and your donations. When I say funding, I would say, I think one of the big mistakes that was made here at Feed Kitchens is that the firm belief that they could raise all the money themselves, that would be private money, and that they could continue to operate and keep the doors open just on earned revenue. Very optimistic. It was not happening, and to this day, still doesn't really happen. We're close, but we don't make it. So tie yourself in with your city, your village, your municipality, your county, your regional, your state economic development folks, and make a case for the kitchen as an economic development driver, local food system supporter, and get that funding in place before you even open. Because what we're trying to do now is backfill that funding, and we're finding some success, but a lot easier to have it up front than to realize, oh my God, we're losing money hand over fist and we need help. When you first open the doors, of course, you're not going to make a ton of money. It's just like any food business. You have to find the people and get them in there and get them renting. And so cash flow is going to be huge. And then I would say finally have very strict set of rules and protocols of how that kitchen operates. Because it's a lot easier to loosen things up if you need to than it is to tighten if things get out of control. And so all of those things were sort of happening here at Feed in the first 2 years. We've got it under control, but we probably would have been a lot better off if we'd have taken care of some of those things initially.
I got something to say. Well, I mean, he's right about everything that he says. I mean, and you need to take it to heart. But once you have that money and the funds to be able to start your operation, a key thing is equipment. You cannot go cheap on these things, especially if we're talking about a shared kitchen. You have to buy high quality equipment, and that it is not cheap. I mean, a lot of people buy like secondhand stuff, and that doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to buy new equipment, come out with a plan of the floor, a floor plan, how you want the equipment to be set up, and the walk-in cooler, the hood fans, and the separation of the different kitchens, grease trap, emphasis grease trap. Some people don't think about that, and they build a place without a grease trap, and then they go into trouble real quick. So I mean, there's lots of details, but that's my peace of mind as far as the beginnings of that. I mean, your equipment and equipment setup. I mean, the setup of the floor plan is so important. Guys, I've done it. That's it.
Great, thank you. I have another question for Thony. First, I want to mention a resource that someone put in the chat, that if anyone is folks who are in the Dane County area and are looking to connect with other restaurateurs and food producers, there is a group fairly recently created within the last year, I believe, called the Dane County Food Collective. That's something that you can look into, and they've formed some good relationships there. So it sounds like a good connection. One thing I was going to ask you, Thony, is Chris talked about, of course, like that there's over 100 food trucks in Madison, then of course, like many restaurants, and not to make this Madison centric, but just other locations where there are perhaps growing numbers of food trucks and just other restaurants in the mix. So I guess I wanted to ask Thony about like the ways that you in this area have kind of had how you've worked to have your business stand out, or communicate and connect with customers, and about it being unique and having a draw to it, so that, especially given how many other food options there are in the area.
Well, very good question. Thank you very much. You know, when you start a business, like a food cart, I always imagine people trying to do their culture. I mean, they wanna bring forward what they learned from their mothers, grandmother, or great grandmothers recipes. And if that is true, and if that's what you want to do, that's the best way to go about it. I mean, you can look around and try to figure out what's out there and what's needed, but if you have something unique, something that you know is already different, and if you have something that you believe in, okay, you have to believe in your product. If you don't believe in your product, it's just not going to work out. And you can do French fries and burgers, and you know there's a million food carts and million tents with fries and burgers out there, and pizza. But if you have that special thing that you believe in, I will say that's it. Me, I sell my culture. I'm lucky to be a Latino Caribbean guy. I was born in Costa Rica. My mom is Jamaican, and you know, I was raised with both cultures in me. So that's what I put forward. I put my Latin Caribbean food or feelings, which I call Latin soul food. First, I put that forward, and that's what I do. And because I did that, I mean, people, it sounds interesting, and people want to try it, you know. And it's my job to don't disappoint, to put 140% of high quality culture vibes in the flavor. So, and that's how it works. I mean, and then one person tell the other, and you know, and it's a chain reaction of goodness, you know. If you keep it real, I mean, keep it absolutely real, and don't be shy about talking about your grandmother. I talk a lot about my mom. You know, when I was a kid, I remember her, like, you know, in the kitchen. I mean, just cooking rice and beans, that she would be singing and dancing in the kitchen, and you know, and those memories that kind of stuck with me, you know. So that's what I do, and that's what I present out there, and that is what's been working for me, because it is absolutely 100% real, you know, and people can read us like a book out there, you know. I have this, what do you call it, charisma? They call it charisma, you know. Well, this is how I am. I'm a little bit crazy in a good way, you know. I just try to present myself with what I feel inside, you know, the happiness to be able to feed them and make them happy a little bit at a time, you know, on the inside.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's excellent. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. So we've got someone with a question, hand raised for a question, a few more in the chat. We'll try to see if we can address those, and then we'll be nearing the end of our time together. But Ali, if you would like to unmute, you can ask your questions.
Thank you. Question for Thony. Earlier you mentioned you're getting into the bottling business and selling it at Woodman's and grocery stores of such. Wondering if you just touch on that and explain give us some pointers on how you got into it, you know, getting in the door of the Woodman, as far as getting an account and labeling and so forth, just to meet the codes and criteria to be able to actually sell on a wholesale level. Thank you.
Well, sauce production, well, it's a long journey, you know, from the idea of, okay, I want to make this sauce that my mother used to make at home. It's a long journey to that, to have it in stores, because first you need to have a recipe that works for the FDA. Because they're looking for a certain amount of, acidity in your product so it doesn't go bad. It's either acidity or salt, which is the natural, preservative. And that took me a while to tweak my recipes in a way that I could send them to a lab so they give me a positive readout of my water content and pH. I mean, along with that, I mean, I had to find labeling and my what do you call the bars? UPCs. There was UPCs companies there. I went with the choice of renting my UPCs versus buying them because I didn't have enough money to buy UPCs because they were extremely expensive. And then after that, when you have to deal with the Department of Agriculture, that they are the ones that give you the go, the yes or no. Obviously they inspect the facilities and make sure that the facilities is appropriate for the product that you're gonna do. Does that answer your question, Ali?
Yeah, thank you. If you can just touch up on how you get into Woodman's, for instance, that'd be great. Thank you.
I got into Woodman by asking. I went over there and asked for a manager. And in every single store in Woodman's, I didn't notice they have managers for everything. Managers that there are managers for organic stuff. There is a manager for local foods that sometimes is the same manager that organized the organic products. So you get to go in there and ask who is the manager in charge of that, not the general manager. The general manager is going crazy every day because he has a million things to do. So you wanna ask for the particular manager for what you need or the product you have to put in there.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Let's see, I think I was trying to scoop some questions for Chris that people put in the chat. So one of them is just, I know you talked about kind of the different procedures and that type of thing. So there was a question about if there's a resource for where you got like the standard operating procedures for feed kitchens, if that's something that you can point folks to for finding and developing those.
They've been developed for so long, I'm not sure where ultimately they came from or we put together, but I'm more than happy to share. Actually, if you go to our website, we do have resources on our website, and we do have a lot of standard operating procedures on there or templates for things like, recall plans or whatever. I think ultimately a lot of this stuff came from DATCAP at some point or extension.
And then there was a question about who enforces the community kitchen rules and cleaning expectations.
Well, everybody does, really. We're all responsible. And so, ultimately I am the director or manager of this facility. And so, enforcement comes to me, but I have always thought that group shame is not a bad thing. And so if somebody's operating poorly, this place gets busy enough that everybody knows, and, they're going to feel the heat from other folks here. Because again, what you do affects other people. And if you're affecting them negatively, they're going to let you know. And folks here talk, and certainly we do our best. It's not a cliquey place. But if you're the person that's being dirty, then you're going to have that, the clean click is going to be watching out for you. So it's a community thing, but ultimately it falls to me. And we do have video cameras here, so you know, if it's the middle of the night, we can go to the video camera and see who did it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I know we're running right up on our time here, so I just wanted to thanks so much. Give a big round of applause over Zoom to the extent that's possible for our speakers, Thony and Chris. And we're going to end the recording. I'll give a few more announcements. We